Hello, everyone. This is Kevin Thompson, founder and CEO of Innings Capital Group. Today, we're here to talk about the one big beautiful bill that was just recently passed back in early July. And I want to make sure you have a firm understanding of what this means, how it's going to impact you, and some of the different pieces of the legislation that I saw that had the most impact. So let's get started. My name again is Kevin Thompson, founder CEO of Innings Capital Group. I'm host of the Nine Innings podcast on YouTube as well. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. And today we're here to talk about what I just said, one big beautiful bill. I am a certified financial planner, practitioner, and an RICP, which is a retirement income certified professional, and also an enrolled agent. With this, we work with retirees mainly, and also business professionals in the uh, sole proprietor space, not including, well, also including the medical space as well. We work with mom and pops and emerging professionals in many spaces. So we're here to help and assist you not only in your financial needs, but also in the portfolio management as well. So I'm here to kind of provide some insight today, and I hope that you find this valuable. So the one big beautiful bill act of 2025. Again, welcome and thank you for joining me today. Today we're here to break down the one big beautiful bill signed into law July 4th in 2025. This is the cornerstone of President Trump's second term, a sweeping package of tax cuts, entitlement reforms, and federal spending shifts. So let's dive in. So first, let's start about how we got here. So this bill was introduced back in May of 2025 as HR 1, a clear signal. It was a top GOP priority. It passed narrowly along party lines and was signed into law on Independence Day, symbolizing economic freedom. It's designed as a direct sequel to the 2017 TCJA, but with expanded scope. As we know, the TCJA back in 2017 was set to expire in 2025. However, this was a sweeping reform that allowed it to expand on what the TCJA provided, and also with a couple of different touches. So some of the biggest headlines and some of the key tax code changes that I found were, like, for example, in the 2017 TCJA, tax cuts are now permanent. The standard deduction was raised significantly, and the child tax credit is now indexed and slightly higher. The SALT cap has also been increased, and but it now includes a gradual phase out for higher earners. So the TCJA, like I mentioned before, this makes the tax cuts permanent. But what I want you to understand, the word permanent in this context. Just because something is permanent doesn't mean it can't be changed. So that's that's the very first most important thing. It can always be changed by the next administration by legislative provision. The standard deduction, like I mentioned before, has been raised. So that's been raised significantly to provide a nice little tax deduction for lower to middle income earners. The child tax credit was also increased, like we mentioned previously as well, which is a boon for a lot of small, lower income and middle income earners as well. And of course, the SALT cap. Now we understand why the SALT cap was brought down to 10,000, now raised back to 40,000 for mainly the blue and red state, the blue states, New York and California. But originally, it was put in place because it wanted to harm the blue states like New York and California, of course. So, with that being said, they're raising this SALT cap to help offset some of the provisions in the old TCJA that really reduced the amount of deductions you could take, or what we'll say in the tax world of people wanting to not use the standard deduction, but basically go into their taxes and be able to use that $40,000 tax deduction that they had maybe on their properties and things like that. So this ultimately caps that at 40,000, helps a lot of the blue states with higher income taxes and be able to offset some of the taxes that they owe. Now, one of the major wins for retirees, I like this because we work with a lot of retirees. The seniors age 65 plus get an additional $6,000 deduction. And if you're married, seniors, you get $12,000. So, but be aware, this phases out for those who are 75,000 for single and $150,000 for joint. This is in effect from the 2025 to 2028. So it's temporary. So plan accordingly. Now, there was something that was sent out by the Social Security Administration saying that, hey, you are no longer taxed on your Social Security amount. And with that being said, that was absolutely false. That was absolutely false because you're still being taxed on your Social Security. You're not getting rid of the tax on your Social Security. You most likely going to end up in the 50% tax or the 85% taxable region. So this is not a tax that just to be understood that this allows you from paying Social Security tax. You're still going to pay some Social Security taxes on your Social Security. So just to be clear, this doesn't wipe away any Social Security taxation. Just minimizes it a little bit. And what we found by doing a little bit of due diligence and some of our clients that we spotted, the savings can be anywhere from $300 for a lower income individual to the upper income individuals that are underneath the phase outs about $3,000. So it can be it's definitely a tax savings, but it's not an absolution of your Social Security tax. Now, there are some new targeted deductions in this bill. The bill introduces some niche deductions aimed at the working class taxpayer, tipped workers, overtime workers, and buyers of Americans assembled vehicles all benefit. But like many parts of the bill, these deductions expire after 2028 unless renewed. One thing to understand is that there's going to be some individuals that assumed that their overtime deduction was completely tax free. That is not the case. There's going to be again, there's caps to that, so you may still see some taxation on those on the overtime. Also, auto loan interest, which I thought was interesting, up to $10,000 deduction for interest loans for U.S. assembled vehicles. That could be powerful, and that may spur some people buying American, which could be good. But again, these are all temporary reliefs. One thing I found interesting, this one was absolutely talked about, of course, a Trump account, a 1,000 government funded account at the birth for every U.S. child. Families can contribute tax deferred annually and use those funds for housing, education, or starting a business. It sunsets in 2030. What needs to be understand, it's a one-time deposit. It's not getting deposited every single year. You have a child, that $1,000 gets deposited into the account. Now you're able to put money into that account up to a limit, and that amount gets to be provided to the child tax deferred. And hopefully, if they want to start a business or go to school, they can use that money in a tax preference manner once they get of age, of adulthood, and I believe it's 30 years old, where you can take that money out and do what you want to do with it. Annual contributions of this account, like I mentioned, $5,000 used for education, housing, entrepreneurship, and the program again offsets or sunsets in 2030. Let's talk about what didn't change. What didn't change? There was no repeal on Social Security taxation. The one big beautiful bill was talking about no taxation on your Social Security. That's absolutely not the case. Social Security tax rules remain, and there were no changes to capital gains or dividend taxes. The IRS enforcement budget wasn't increased, but political pressure continues. The estate tax exemption stays locked in at 2026 sunset levels around 13 million. Uh, I think what's more powerful about this is that there was a lot of rhetoric out there about Social Security taxation. Like I mentioned previously, Social Security is still taxed. So just to make sure that's clear, there is no removal of taxation on Social Security. Now, this is where the debate heats up. The bill is expected to add roughly 2.8 to 3.4 trillion to the deficit over 10 years. Tax cuts alone account for 4 trillion in revenue loss, with only modest offsets from spending cuts. The debt ceiling was automatically raised to make room. The bill I found was just really they wanted to increase the debt ceiling so they didn't have to keep going back and forcing and possibly forcing a shutdown of the government. What this does is, well, it's going to increase the deficit significantly, but the idea is they're thinking that the increased growth and the offset in revenue and tariffs will offset some of that spending, which will lead to a quote unquote surplus that's still left to be seen. So we will be seeing how that impacts moving forward. Now, this is one of the most contested parts of the bill, which was spending cuts offsets Medicaid and SNAP benefits. There were significant cuts to the Medicaid and SNAP benefits, and that remains to be seen how that's going to impact the lower income individuals. What's also needs to be seen is that, just to be fair, I want to be fair in the context of this, is that a lot of the Medicaid and SNAP cuts were due to the enhanced version of that after COVID. So when COVID, Biden and the Biden administration enhanced and expanded Medicaid and all the other benefits. Now they're just rolling that back because that wasn't supposed to be something that was supposed to be forever. They went so what the Republicans basically did, they just rolled that back to where it was supposed to be, and with a significant cut in those programs. So just to continue on the Medicaid and SNAP overhaul, the bill introduced new work requirements, cost sharing mandates for Medicaid and SNAP, food stamps recipients aimed at reducing program enrollment. The 5-year wait for green card holders, that was a big one. The legislation imposed a 5-year waiting period for green card holders to access Medicaid and SNAP benefits. The 50 billion rural hospital fund created temporary through 2032 to mitigate the impact of Medicaid and SNAP cuts. This bill allocated 50 billion to a temporary fund supporting rural hospitals. People were afraid that with the Medicaid and SNAP cuts, there was going to be a significant closure of rural hospitals, which you started to see that in some areas. But again, they're using a lot of this money to offset that eventuality. So, like I said before, work requirements are now in place for Medicaid and SNAP recipients, and states must share more of the cost. New immigrants, like I said, face the 5-year wait, and the 50 billion rural hospital fund was added to soften the blow. But projections show millions may lose coverage based on this. So this remains to be seen. This is one of the most debated, heavily talked about because a lot of Republican districts are in rural areas. And if they start seeing their hospitals shut down in those areas, it could be a significant hit not only to their continued candidacy and representation in that place and where they're represented, but also they may start hearing some harsh criticism, which you've seen through a lot of those town halls on TV. Now, the immigration and border provisions. This bill includes the most aggressive immigration funding in U.S. history: 170 billion for walls, ICE, and deportation infrastructure. New facilities support up to 1 million removals per year, and e-verification is now federally mandated for all employers. Again, this is debated. You're starting to see facilities being built across the country. Enforcement budget again was raised, and of course deportation. They're looking to hit those targets. So you're seeing things in California, things in Texas, ICE raids across the country, and this is what the people voted for in regards to how they want immigration handled according to the processes put in place, and of course the border wall is another one that's a significant issue. This one hits home really, really loudly because I have a lot of people that are in the medical field, student loan and education reform. Student loan reform includes the new RAP plan starting in 2026. It extends the forgiveness timeline to 30 years, eliminates subsidized loans for undergrads, and ties Pell Grants increases to inflation. These changes will hit new and current borrowers differently. One thing I did find, because I have a lot of surgeons and doctors that we work with, um, capping the graduate loans to about 100,000, which will force a lot of people to take private loans. And here's the real idea. The idea is you're trying to bring down the cost because if it's subsidized by the government, they feel like that colleges have taken advantage of the government and of the system, and that's why you've seen the huge price increases in a lot of these universities. So the government is thinking, well, if we remove ourselves as much from the subsidizing these loans, maybe colleges will bring down their price. That remains to be seen. But as of now, there's going to be less individuals getting government subsidized loans and possibly having to go private. Some other highlights: the bill wasn't just about tax reform. There's a $10 billion for NASA, 12 billion for air traffic control upgrades. You guys have seen this time and time again. I know there's been a lot of incidents in regard around the country in regards to air traffic, so they're trying to get this whole system upgraded. That's going to take a lot of time. And by the way, by upgrading the system, I've said this time and time again, upgrading the system, by the time they get it upgraded, it's gonna have to get another upgrade. So it's gonna be one of those constant upgrades. By the time they get it upgraded, it's already gonna be outdated. So it's one of those things that you're gonna be chasing technology from here on out for the rest of our lives because, like you've probably seen it time and time again. You look on your computer, I just updated this last week, and that's just the moral of the story. And of course, 85 billion dollars expected from telecom spectrum auctions. It also eliminates the federal tax on gun suppressors. It extends RECA for radiation exposed workers. So let's get down to the nuts and bolts of this. Who are the winners and losers of this thing? Now, I don't like to think about it as a zero sum game, but let's just talk about who's winning and who's losing. So, seniors, small business owners, high earners, and low tax states are clear winners. Clearly, the tax breaks, whether it be on the sole proprietor business owner side, but for small businesses, high earners in low tax states are clear winners. Meanwhile, low income households and those in high tax states still face some limits, and older student loan borrowers get no relief. I constantly get quoted in multiple articles about the student loans, and here's the reality, guys. They want everyone to repay their student loans. They're trying to get rid of the Department of Education, and that Department of Education, they're trying to roll that up into another organization. Now we know back in, I believe in the late 70s or the 80s, that the Department of Education was born, and now they're trying to roll that back into the original organization, into the original format, and that's going to cause a little bit of headache because now with all the workers being pushed out of the system, getting information timely may be a little bit more difficult, and getting people to get the information, because I know they've been changing the websites and everything like that. It may be a little bit more difficult as well. But the upgrades are coming, the updates are coming, so hopefully they'll smooth all that out, and there will be more people, or more automation of the system that'll make it a little bit more effective and efficient for those students that are trying to get answers. So what comes next? The clock is already ticking. Many provisions begin sunsetting in 2026. States may resist with their own laws, expect lawsuits, especially over Medicaid reform, and politically, this will dominate the 2026 midterms. It's a huge flashpoint going forward. There's a big one coming up. There's in 2025 in November, there's going to be some gubernatorial races, and also in 2026 there's going to be the midterm. So they'll see exactly how this pans out. States again will I have already started pushing back, especially for those who are getting significant Medicaid or government assistance in regards to reductions in Medicaid and funding from that perspective. So expect some legal challenges moving forward. It's gonna get a little muddy out there. So now it's time to act. Seniors should recapture the enhanced deduction while it lasts. Business owners need to explore how to leverage new QBI and overtime rules, and families should compare Trump accounts to Roth IRAs or 529s. Preparation now avoids regret later. This has been a quick update on the one big beautiful bill. Some of the top impacts, some of the top things that we saw coming out of the bill. I hope this has been a valuable use of your time. If you want to contact us, there's our phone number. And you can reach us on MLB to CFP on any of the social media channels. For example, on Twitter, on Facebook is at MLB to CFP. On all the other channels, Kevin Thompson. You can find me on LinkedIn there, and then of course on YouTube at 9iCap. Thank you guys for listening, and I hope this has been valuable use of your time. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out and contact us at any time. Thanks again.